Morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is projection and how we get to explore how much a role or what kind of role projection plays in our lives, projecting our interpretations of other people's thoughts or feelings, projecting our own emotions onto situations in our interpretation. I think it'll be an interesting conversation. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. So good to have you here with us this morning. And welcome to everybody else who's joining us. Before we get started talking about projection, let's take a couple minutes to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light, lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, and the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present, right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So projection. Originally, when I was thinking of this topic, I was thinking of how we project our past into the future. And an example of that is when we are looking at opportunities, when we're looking to create something for the future, we look at the way that things are and the way that things have been as a constraint on the way things can be and the way that we could create things going forward. And I've seen this in so many instances, so many different contexts. I think it's really fascinating how we keep ourselves mired or anchored in the patterns that we already have. So I was working with a client who has had issues with anxiety, and we did a process that was looking to kind of recontextualizing the whole dynamic of anxiety for them. And in thinking forward, they were anticipating, well, what happens if, or not just what happens if, what happens when this thing arises that we had already just worked to clear. And so not only was this person projecting into the future, but in their way, they were invoking this particular occurrence because they were practicing it into the future. And so when we imagine, which is part of projection is imagination, right? Worry, in fact, is imagination, just used in a negative way. When we project into the future, we're starting to entrain ourselves. We're starting to lay the neural network to support what it is that we are projecting forward. And so this person was saying, well, I have to practice this or the other thing. But the thing that they were looking to practice was based on the assumption of a negative outcome, just assuming that that was going to occur. And what they did was they took portions of their past and they projected them into the future. Now, some of us believe that that behavior is being reasonable or being rational. And the thing is that I understand being circumspect enough to prepare or to take into consideration possible eventualities. There's a difference between having considerations and addressing them versus projecting them into the future as what's going to happen. So this was another interesting thing with a client who is very much on the verge of new income possibilities all over the place. And what they found themselves doing was imagining into the future based on the financial constraints that they have in the moment. Now, I'm not saying to take action, to go spending, for instance, based on income that's not existent. I'm not suggesting that, but here this person was trying to vision a future. And what they were doing was they were carrying forth the limitations of their existing circumstance. And they were basing their future on that rather than all these prospects that were emerging and the capabilities that they already had. And I think this is a really interesting phenomenon that we engage in, where we hold for a continuity, even of negativity. We carry a continuity. Well, this is how it is, so that's how it will be, which is not necessarily the case at all. And even when the this is how it is piece is uncomfortable, we tend to defer to the comfort of projecting that forward rather than entertaining new potentials. And the entertaining of new potentials certainly can be disruptive because there's an unknown there. There's a moving out of this one rutted path that has been worn. And when you think about moving, when you're driving and your car gets stuck in a rut, it's hard to get out of that rut, to turn out of that rut. But that rut is leading down a well-trod path that isn't necessarily the best path to get to where you want to go. And so it takes a deliberate effort to turn out of that rut and to be exploring cleaner surfaces and to be developing new patterns, new pathways, new channels. And so another circumstance where we can witness projection is when, let's say, we're having a miserable day and we are in a grocery line and we look at somebody and they look away. And it's likely that we would project that there was something personal about that interaction. that we could project that that person just is disgusted by me or something, which is craziness, right? Because maybe that person was having a bad day and feeling really isolated and just couldn't make contact with people. And we don't know what was going on with that person, but we project our emotions, our perspective on another in our interpretations. Somebody said something in a certain way, somebody gave us a sideways look, somebody did whatever they did, somebody cut us off when we're driving. And what happens is we make that a personal affront. And why do we do that? We don't always do that, but when we do that, why do we do that? What we're doing is we're projecting our interpretation outward. We're projecting our emotional state outward. And so when we're in an upset, we emanate that, we project that, we see through that lens. And that is a projection, right? When we're depressed, the whole world's going to hell in a handbasket. And there's all kinds of justification to validate that notion. When we're in joy, the world's a beautiful place, and we see beauty and wonder everywhere. Is it that the world has changed, or have we changed? And so the way that we react to people also changes based on our inner experience. And so it begs the question of what's real and what's not real, which has been my age-old question. And can we access what's real beyond our personal biased experience? Can we access what's real? The way that we can come closer and closer, perhaps, is by recognizing our own projection, recognizing the state from which we're making the interpretations of the world that we're making. And to be recognizing, wow, I'm feeling negative, and look at all the things that I'm projecting in a negative way. Look at all the validation I'm giving myself for this negativity. With curiosity. So here we come back to curiosity is the antidote for so much, especially if we can allow ourselves to be curious about what's going on for us and what's going on for others, rather than saying, oh, that person doesn't like me. To be curious about, well, what's going on? First of all, what made me interpret that? And then what's up with that? Not just presuming that our projections are truth. We create such intense discomfort for ourselves. Years ago, and I know I've talked about this before, but years ago, I had the opportunity to volunteer at an event with the Dalai Lama for a week. And the one thing that I came away with that has profoundly impacted me and that I keep feeling into more and more deeply was him saying that all suffering is a function of misconceptualization. So all suffering is a result of the way that we think. or fallacy in the way that we think. That's not to say that we can't experience pain and sorrow and grief and whatever, but the perpetuation of that, the suffering, which is the perpetuation of that, is a result of our thinking, projecting those thoughts onto the present, onto the future, onto the past, projecting our thoughts, projecting our emotions. So good morning, Robin. How good to have you here with us this morning. Welcome. And Rosalind says, I like that analogy. The rut in the road has well-defined path for wheels. Get out of automatic pilot. That's what we're up to. That's exactly what we're up to. It can be challenging because it's disruptive, 100% disruptive. I mean, getting out of that rut, it's not necessarily easy. It takes some acceleration and intentionality, right? What is the practice? Getting back to what is real. If I'm feeling negative, ask, am I negative now? If so, get curious as to the source of negativity. So I love what you're saying, Rosalind. The one thing I want to address is, am I negative? It's not, I would invite you to look at the question, am I thinking negatively now? Although energetically, probably what happens is that we're emitting a negative charge when we're feeling negative. But getting curious really makes a difference. Rosalind says suffering is wanting to be there instead of here. That's what definitely one way that we can suffer. Big time. Maybe the biggest foundation of suffering is wanting things to be other than the way they are. So creating that resistance where we're resisting the reality of the moment, whatever that is, or we think we know better how things should be different. People should be different. I should be different. Circumstances in the world should be different. It's that shoulda, woulda, coulda kind of deep trap. And regrets. So we talked about regrets the other day, and holding regrets is again projecting our past into the present and into the future. And I'm not saying just pretend things never happened. I am an advocate of doing what's possible for us to clean things up, finding a way to clean things up that feels within integrity. So this notion of projection, I don't know that we ever can escape it. Our best opportunity to escape projection is being as present as we can be in clearing whatever reactivity we have in curiosity. Curiosity is a fabulous tool. I think that curiosity can lead us to a place of compassion and understanding. And when we find that place of compassion, then judgment gets released. So projection and judgment are very tightly related. I think it's true that our experience of life is entirely a projection. And it's that we really don't know what's underlying. We have our interpretations, right? And I'm kind of grouping our interpretations with the notion of projection. So the notion that the sky is blue, and we have kind of a common agreement about that. The thing is that we don't know that the blue that you see and the blue that I see is the same thing. We just agree that whatever that experience is, we're both calling blue, but we don't know what the actual nature of that individualized experience is. It's pretty remarkable how we can come to agreement, how we can develop language and actually communicate with some degree of understanding. The experience of the blueness of the sky, however, is something that goes beyond our ability to communicate. So when you say the sky is blue, and I say the sky is blue, the projection is that we're seeing the same thing. And that may not be the case. So I think about my cat, Jewel, and I don't know, I have no idea how much she sees. She has scars on her eyes that she's had since she was a kitten. And she sees differently. I know she sees differently because there are times when she'll be staring up into the corner of the room and there's nothing there that I can see, but she will be watching intently. I know that she sees differently because she will play with a toy, but sometimes I'll throw the toy and she doesn't even register where it went. She can't tell where it went. And yet she can sense me or see me winked at her from across the room, and she'll wink back. So when we talk about seeing, the experience of seeing that I have clearly is very different from the experience of seeing that she has. And she might not even notice that seeing is seeing, anyway, this brings me back to the fascination that I have with the story of people who are able to see without their eyes, read documents, navigate rooms, paint, do all kinds of things that a sighted person can do, but without the use of their eyes. I don't know quite how we got there for projection. So here's another aspect of this notion of projection, astral projection. So I imagine that a number of you have had experiences where you have had an experience of being outside your body, maybe traveled, maybe experienced things that could be verified that typically you couldn't have known. So projection of consciousness in a whole different way than just projecting our thoughts or our feelings, our interpretations on others, but projecting our consciousness. And there are all kinds of studies about this, and there's groups of people that were trained by the CIA to be shaman spies, where they did essentially astral projection. They called it remote viewing, to see different places around the world and the universe at different times. They could project through time and space, and they were able to validate and verify lots and lots of the experimental data that they collected. So one of the people who was one of the premier shaman spies is named Joe McMoneagle, and he has a book, at least one book that he wrote, and I don't recall the title of it, but you might want to look at that. But it's very interesting because it's projecting consciousness, which again gives us a question about what is real and what isn't real, and who are we, and what is this whole experience? Is the whole thing a projection? Kind of interesting. So Rosalind says body awareness can be a tool, getting out of head and using breath to see where tension is being held. Why does that help? Helps the nervous system recalibrate back to calm. And calm is placed from where we can tune into the inner landscape rather than focusing on external circumstances. I love this notion of, or this call to come back to our bodies. As we come back to the breath, as we experience our body, there's a greater integration. We are body, mind, and spirit. Our body is a big place, a big part of our experience here in the world. We cannot experience any of our experience in this world without our bodies, at least as humans. And so many of us are at odds with our bodies. When we learn to make peace with our bodies, that's when we can come into greater realization, I think, as we become a more integrated being. We talked about integrity. As we become a more integrated being, body, mind, and spirit, or heart, heart, mind, and body, whatever it is, all those pieces, if we take them away from being pieces and bring them into being a unified whole, then we have a very different experience. So that's it for today, folks. You might be interested in joining us tonight for Sustainability Now movie night. We're showing how AI is being used to interpret animal language, and how this development can be changing our relationship to ourselves and everything in the world. So if you're interested in it, I think it's going to be a fascinating evening. Please go to https://sustainabilitynow.global instead of .com. And if you sign up for our email, you will get notification. The notification for this evening goes out at 6:30 Eastern, and movie night is from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. So I invite you to join us. And that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And as always, I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network. And again, it is always my privilege and pleasure to have this opportunity to engage in these conversations together. And I deeply, deeply appreciate it. So until next time, so much love.